Celtic Stuff Live.
Welcome to Celtic Stuff Live on the CLNS Media Network, the leading online provider of audio and video coverage for the Boston Celtics. I'm your host, Justin Poulin, and with me, John Duke. We've got a little bit of a weekend review for you because the Celtics still trying to beat up on the Warriors, almost get it done. Sure, they came out on fire without Marcus Smart. We'll be talking about him, Jayson Tatum, and the rookie Wall. I think it's for real now. All you naysayers from a couple of shows ago, John. And then also the trade deadline is only 10 days away. February 8th is right around the corner. Celtics proving in that Warriors game, that's where we'll start it off on today's show, proving that maybe they've got a real shot at competing not only in the postseason and maybe getting through the Cavs, but if they do get to the NBA Finals, then I think they showed that they can compete with this Warriors team. They have in previous years, even without Kyrie Irving, who had just a miraculous effort in that game. And I feel like the ball still swung around, just not a lot of guys who could put it in the bucket necessarily when the game was on the line, or definitely with that second unit. That's really been a struggle for this team, John.
I think even before going to your second point there, I think the first point is the one that's most important, which is they took a punch to the face, the strongest punch maybe that the Golden State Warriors can give them, in that they get an almost 50-point performance from Steph Curry. Even in all these games that the Celtics have played, tough games they played against Golden State, both the first one I guess it would be 2 years ago where they lost the first game at home and they go to Golden State and win. Then last year, obviously tough games there, playing both in Boston and in Golden State, winning the one in Boston to start this year, now here going there. In none of those times did we see Steph Curry kind of go off, do that Steph Curry thing where he goes supernova. We got it. We got it in spades here coming in on Saturday night in Oakland. But Celtics still had a chance to win that game. And there was a lot of reasons why you got to stand back and say, geez, even after that, you got to feel really good about the Celtics' chances. Didn't get a great game out of Tatum. Got a pretty good game out of Jaylen Brown. Kudos to him.
I would say a great game out of Jaylen Brown. Come on, let's say a great game out of Jaylen Brown. He played phenomenal, especially he likes being out on the West Coast. I don't know what it is, but he plays well out there. Must be because he went to college. I'd love to say it's his home, but it's not. He grew up in Atlanta, but he loves the West Coast, always seems to do well. I also loved his control around the rim. I'd say that was an area you tend to see him get out of control, especially when he plays aggressive and starts to attack the basket. And yet here we see a player who is very much under control in that game and also dropping his three-pointers. That was fantastic. And you talk about competing, they really did shut down Klay Thompson, although I think they wanted Klay to play more of the defensive assignment in that game, so I'm not going to completely trash him for not being the player that was going off offensively, because the Celtics defense, definitely one of the strongest in the NBA. The stats are no joke 50 games into the year, but then you also have Kevin Durant, who really did not have a very good game either. You're going to run into Curry. You're going to run into him a lot. And it makes you think, and I'm jumping the gun, we're not ready to talk about Marcus Smart, but it makes you think when that second unit was going through those rotations and going through those stumbles that a defensive dog-minded Marcus Smart would have helped them quite a bit.
Yeah, and I'm kind of pouring through the advanced box score stuff on going on Basketball Reference right now. And you're right. I mean, Jaylen Brown, his offensive rating that game was 144. The downside is his D rating was 121, which was the worst of all the starters and only just a little bit above Shemi Ojeley's 123 in terms of being the worst of all the Celtics players who played. Now, come on, let's give him some credit. He's going up against Klay Thompson, Kevin Durant. Those are the guys he's defending. That's not an easy matchup, no matter what you do.
He was drawing the difficult matchup on most of those possessions too.
Sure, absolutely.
That's the other thing. And with an offensive juggernaut, really four awesome all-world players. I mean, 4 all-stars for the second year in a row. That's never happened in the NBA. So there you go. You've got a team that is really it's a team that'll never be recreated again. They'll never let the salary cap allow that to happen in our lifetimes anyway, John, ever again. That's a one-time shot there. And yet the Celtics, despite a couple of bad possessions and a really crazy three-pointer from Steph Curry, were in that game the whole way through. They just let it slip away with about a minute and 40 seconds left. But had they made just a couple of extra plays down the stretch, they could have taken that one. And that could have been 2-0 against the Warriors on the year.
And that would be I still think they walk away from that game feeling good about themselves. I mean, Steve Opett wrote about it in the Herald. Look, this would have been the Celtics' best game of the year. From Steve's perspective, I'm not sure I'd go that way. I'd probably go with maybe the first win over Golden State and how varied they were. That was a good game, both from Horford, everybody. I think everyone touched that one.
Tatum had a good game. Yeah, Tatum had a good game the first time. But he really did kind of really struggled in this second matchup.
He did.
The Warriors.
2 for 9. He had a good night against the Clippers, there on Thursday night or Wednesday night. And I think that's a sign perhaps of some of the stuff we talked about, last week. But yeah, I mean, really when it comes right down to it, he took a real back seat here compared to some of the guys Terry Rozier hit a big three that really
not just Terry Rozier. Poor Daniel Tice gets lost in that discussion because of Rozier's three. But if you actually want to look at where the game was at when Tice hit that, I think it was about 4 or 5 minutes left in the game, and they were kind of falling behind. And then Tice hits this huge three-pointer. He's not afraid to shoot that, take it. But even in the clutch like that for a 25-year-old rookie coming over from overseas, totally reigns a tray. And you also got to give a little bit of love to Shane Larkin, who I thought played admirably. Would I rather have had Marcus Smart still? Absolutely, especially down the stretch. But Larkin took it to Kevin Durant on one play and was able to get by him off the first step and lay in off the glass. I mean, that's not easy to do, especially when you're kind of an end of the bench guy on the rotation, even for a team as good as the Celtics.
Yeah, and I'd say that Larkin's performance, a lot of great performances out there. Let me ask you this question, because, one thing that kind of came out of it, of course, there were the plays near at the end, the bunnies that one was a great play by Durant. The other was just a miss by Morris. Is Marcus Morris kind of looking too much for that shot? And I think they need offense, and I think he's got to provide that. But you look at a guy like Jaylen Brown, who's got 20 points, 6 for 9 shooting, getting to the line, doing a lot, not really getting the ball in his hands, not getting opportunities. Do you want to force him when he's playing well to give him more opportunities? Or is it that's just a little bit out of his comfort zone? It seems like the Celtics like to say, get what you can on your opportunities, but you are who you are as a player. And it doesn't allow people to kind of grow out of that. And I wonder, a game like Saturday night, you want to see, he shouldn't be the guy with like the 5th most shots, when he's got 20 points and 6 for 9. Whereas, Marcus Morris is tied for the 2nd most shots, and he had only hit 33% of them. So what do you feel about that? I mean, should they be pushing the envelope with some of these guys when they have the hot hand?
Probably to a degree, but I think one of the things I loved about that Warriors game is that they did keep moving it around to help take some of the attention off. And I thought when we talked last week that was something we identified as a major struggle for this team recently, is that they had stopped doing that. So I think you got to stay with it. The issue with Marcus Morris is, he's a matchup starter or a matchup finisher in the game, depending on how it's going, but he's not somebody who should be starting or finishing games on a regular basis necessarily for a team that's going to be in the finals, right? I love him, but I think he's more of a stabilizing presence off the bench, on the second unit, and then if the matchups dictate, you pull him in. Unfortunately, due to injuries and Tatum's slump, that's what happened. In the end of that game, they had to have Terry Rozier because of the absence of Marcus Smart, and because of Tatum's poor performance, they had Marcus Morris out there. I think ideally what they would rather have done was keep Tatum out there, were Tatum the player that he had been in the first matchup and most of the season till recently, and then had Morris out there. But that would have given them additional offense. Morris could have focused on defense a little bit more, and I think that would have given them some strength. I think that's more what they were looking for. And if Terry had also still had had the hot hand, maybe it would have been Terry instead of Morris out there. But that's how I kind of feel about it. Keep the ball moving around. It's key. I will say this too, though. When you look at Tatum's struggles and you know that you want somebody like Morris on the bench filling in for a struggling Tatum or just in general due to injuries, it only enhances the fact that when Hayward comes back, and I'm not even saying if anymore, and I know Brad came out on Sunday and said we're not expecting him back this year, blah, 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 blah. Let us use the $8 million and not get into any trouble. But really at the end of the day, the kid's coming back, man. And here's the exciting thing. If they do see Golden State again this year, it won't be until June. So they can actually have him take his time in the postseason as he gets right. If he's back out there practicing with the team by the end of March, he still has 2 months before he has to hit his stride for the finals. That's all I'm going to say about that. I'm pretty excited. I want to come back and talk a little bit about the week in review, but first I want to remind everybody that you can follow Celtic Stuff Live on Twitter at CSL_tweet live, as well as your host. You can follow me at CSL_Justin. John is at CSL_Duke, and the entire CLNS Media Network is at CLNS Media. The Facebook page, facebook.com/CLNS fans. And don't forget to download the CLNS Media app for iOS and Android. Simply search CLNS Media in your app marketplace. And finally, the YouTube channel, youtube.com/CLNS Media for high definition, full length locker room interviews and the Garden Report, as well as a Celtics roundtable, a couple of favorites of ours. And then John, we got to go back to the week in review. I'm excited about Hayward. I'm only going to tease it. We're actually going to focus a little bit more on trade deadline on this show because there's a little bit of heating up going on there. First rumor to sort of break, I guess. Not quite break, but we'll get to that in a second. But I want to look back at the other couple of games. I didn't get to watch either the Lakers game or the Clippers game. They were late games, and I was traveling myself for work. But I saw your tweet from the Lakers game about how all of a sudden January 31st, 2007 turned on its head. I love it, dude. Tell me.
Well, it's look, for the folks who haven't been longtime listeners to the show that go back more than a decade, shame on you. No, I'm just kidding. Here's the setup. Justin's at the game. Lakers, Celtics at the Fleet Center at that point in time, I believe. I don't believe it was TD Garden at that point. Fleet Center. Justin's there. You were covering the game, correct? You were not there as a spectator. You were there covering the game for
No, I think I did go. I think I did go as a spectator because it was about was it a month before I started using it was a month because it was that horrible season. I didn't start using the credentials till that February. I went down, I met up with the Gang Green guys after the game, but I'm pretty sure I took the Amtrak, the old train, the Downeaster.
There you go. Yes,
the pretty sure I took the Downeaster from Portland to the game, went out with the Gang Green guys afterwards, and then caught the train home. I'm pretty sure that's how that went.
I dare say that was in a season filled with an 18-game losing streak, 30-plus games missed by Paul Pierce due to an issue with his elbow, a year when Tony Allen blew out his knee, and there was a whole bunch of injuries. Al Jefferson's ankle, they couldn't figure out what was going on with there, and it turned out there were some issues. The worst in all that was that date when you were in there at the Garden, or at that time at the Fleet Center, and there were MVP chants for one, Kobe beating Bryant. And the show after that, of
all players, Kobe, though.
How long did we go through that on that show? So
how many shows have we brought it up since that show? I still talk about that as the most painful moment that I have as a memory of being a Celtics fan. It was unacceptable. That's all I can say. Unacceptable.
It's so it's not unfortunate you missed this. But almost 11 years to the day, almost. I mean, give or take a week. 11 years to the day. Celtics are playing at the Staples Center, the vaunted Staples Center, scene of many championships, scene of probably the worst Celtics loss of at least the last 20 years, going with the Game 7, 2010, we all remember. And what happens? Kyrie goes to the line, and what do we hear? MVP. I would have thought your ears were burning at that point. I would have thought that you had some alert on your phone that would have gone off and said, "Oh, well, wait, what? What is this I see?" MVP for Kyrie at Staples Center? I mean, it's
like you said before the show. It's so weird that we have the cool kid on the block. But I will say this before we dive into, what it takes to sell shoes and how much that means in this game. I want to talk a little bit about the fact that the Celtics didn't close it, because guess what? January 31st, 2007, guess who closed it? Yeah, Kobe did in a blowout. Now we go to the struggling Lakers with a pick tied to that game, and we drop an egg like that? We lose during MVP chance? That's kind of sad, John. It's sad.
Well, it is.
Because it's not total karma. It's not total retribution. It's like it's a semi-unsatisfying retribution. And I get it.
Yes.
On its own plane, separated from wins and losses and everything else, there's retribution there, but you still got to close, man. You got to close against one of the worst teams in the NBA.
And the Celtics, what was encouraging about it is the Celtics were digging themselves out. They had played well, and then Kyle Kuzma just went supernova for a second, took over the fourth quarter, and
Kuzma Nova. Dang.
Yeah. It was impressive on his part, but really very unimpressive on the Celtics' part. Not rising to the challenge, not facing it, not going after it. It was a very poor performance to close that game out. Smart had a great game. And then, he did what I think he thought was the
Smart
best
had a great
situation.
game. The last great game for quite some time. We'll get to that in a second.
We'll get to that in a sec. Yeah. But I think, he made the second best call he could have made in terms of bringing it up and shooting it. There was a chance he had to give it to Rozier, who's obviously the better shooter and advancing the ball and all that. Didn't do it. Jared Weiss went through that really, appropriately on his Twitter feed. But look, it didn't happen. They lost the game, but kudos to them. Obviously in the melee, you get, the concussion to Horford or the near concussion to Horford. And then they come back and play great against the Clippers the next night. And I think that has set the stage now, I think, where they played well against the Warriors. I think they've now recaptured who they are after the London trip. And I think we'll have a good run here through the rest of the way.
Yeah, it is frustrating though, that almost concussion to Horford. That's scary, man. That's scary. He's been through that enough times, just even as a member of the Celtics, let alone an entire career. That always gets me a little edgy, especially because, as you mentioned, your concern before the start of the year was depth on this team and how would the second unit be able to deal with it. The loss of Hayward, really, that was my kind of fix for that. I think they would have had plenty of depth without injuries, but they really can't afford to suffer the injuries the way that they did earlier in the year. So let's talk about Smart, then we'll hit the midway point. We'll come back and talk trade deadline among other topics, but Smart has some lack of details here, but has some sort of a hissy fit in the hotel, maybe hotel room.
A hissy fit, yes.
It's a hissy fit. You don't go punching, look, I can see the pictures behind you. There's some great Celtics photos.
I have not swiped at any of them. No swiping going on behind me.
Yeah, swiper, no punching, dude. No,
Well, he called it a swipe.
Doctor.
He didn't call it a punch. He called it a swipe, so.
You don't break glass with a swipe.
Right. This is a swipe, I couldn't break anything doing that. If I give it one of these.
He punched it, dude. He punched it. He's got lacerations. He's out for 2 weeks. There's a little bit of criticism at the end of the Lakers game, but there's a lot of bit of criticism on the year. This is his contract year. He wanted to get paid. This move could not have been more poorly timed. If anything, for those of you who like Marcus Smart and think that on his next contract he'll begin to really rise, it helps us believe that we may be able to get him on a bargain deal in the offseason. It's certainly possible. It's not going to help him. The postseason will dictate what kind of a contract he gets ultimately. I think that's, the midseason matters quite a lot, but at this point he set the bar pretty low. If he performs excellent in the postseason, then, maybe he gets the cash. But I'm just telling you right now, John, that was the worst thing that could have happened, because what was the knock on him? Right? He, coming into the league, The knock was he couldn't keep it together, and everybody loved his fire, but it reportedly had been very much under control. And I'm not saying, punching he didn't punch a person. He didn't get into a Tony Allen scenario. He wasn't at a nightclub shooting guns off. I get that. He didn't have the accusations that Avery Bradley currently has.
Yeah, we haven't talked about that, and I'm not sure we want to.
We don't, because it's if he was with the Celtics, we'd dive in. Because he's not, we're going to let it go. We're just going to cast that line and let it sink. But Smart, it's Smart not horrible, but but because he's not playing to any substantial level above previous, above last year, it hurts his contract, and this doesn't help.
Right. And I think that, you go back with Smart and you look at what he's done and what type of year he's had, and this goes on top of it, and it's visible and it's available, and everyone's going to notice that Marcus Smart has, that's the first thing that someone's going to talk to his agent about. What type of guy is this guy? What type of, locker room guy? What is he really like? Yeah, I see what I see on the court, but he missed a game here. He's punched the wall in Washington. I saw the whole thing where he went after the old guy in the stands at Oklahoma State. I mean, all that stuff is going to get thrown in his face. And I think he's been very upfront, very, candid about what happened, what he says, all of that. But when you're making $100 million or $80 million or even a $50 million decision about keeping somebody as a major player on your roster, those questions need to be really good. And on top of that, you need to have some numbers that you can live by. And right now, under 30% shooting from the field, 35% from the field outside of 3-point land, that's not going to get it done. And if he's looking, as somebody, I think it was on the Celtics Talk podcast on NBC, SN or CSN, whatever they are. Kyle and Sherrod, and they're saying, Sherrod was intimating that, he thought that Smart was looking for something bigger than what Kelly Olynyk got, and basically bigger than any of the guys he's played with, bigger than the deal that Evan Turner got. So that's $17-18 million. So
come on, let's be real. They're all looking for a max deal. Right. They're all looking for a max deal. It's definitely not happening for Smart. And this, like I said, missing 2 weeks in the middle of a season because you can't keep your cool and not, even if you just punch the wall and not the picture. I mean, it's just, I have no idea what happened. We're never going to know. They'll keep it under wraps, but really bad move to just absolutely lose. I think it's 8 games that's on the docket that he's likely to miss. And it's not like Tom Brady where he can just slap some tape over his hand and go out and be the man. The truth is, right now he's a glue guy. That's it. Glue guys don't make $20 million a year. I'm sorry. And glue guys who can't keep their cool definitely don't make $20 million a year because they're supposed to be the locker room presence. I love his fight. I'm not down on Smart. I never thought he should get $20 million. However, he may not be with the roster at the end of the year, and we're going to tee that right up. But first, I'm going to tell you how Hoops fans, the trade deadline is right around the corner. How's that for a segue? And now that your favorite hardwood heroes have figured out their roster and know that they're going to make some moves if they're playoff ready, it's time for you to put your fantasy knowledge to the test to win huge cash prizes every night playing one-day fantasy basketball at DraftKings.com. At DraftKings, there are so many ways to play. You choose from public contests with huge cash prizes or private contests where you can compete against your friends, and they've even got beginner and casual contests where you'll play against people of a similar skill level. The best part is that you get to draft a new team each day, and that is the best part of fantasy. The only thing that's better is winning cash doing it. Just ask Dan from St. Louis or Jeremy from Austin. They both turned a $3 entry into $1,000. That's right. Cash prizes and bragging rights await only at DraftKings. Use the code CLNS at DraftKings.com free with your first deposit for your share of $10,000 in total prizes. Tonight, don't wait. wait. Use code CLNS at DraftKings.com now to choose your lineup, and you can cash in. That's code CLNS only at DraftKings.com. The game inside the game. Minimum $5 deposit required. Eligibility restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com for details. Okay, John, trade deadline. Rumors are breaking. Go ahead. Why don't you tee it up for us?
Well, I think the big one that broke here, this is Sunday night when we're recording this. Ron Tillery from the Memphis Commercial Appeal, long time Grizz beat writer, guy that's been on the beat a long time, tweeted tonight, said, not confirmed, but it appears that, Tyreke Evans may be head of the Celtics. Okay. Well, that's
curious timing. That's all I'm going to say. I mean, I know the trade deadline's right around the corner. Marcus Smart's not going to play again between now and the trade deadline. That's all I'm going to say. And he's got a little bit of cash. He can make the salaries work. Maybe you throw in another pick. Definitely not a high pick. I don't think Tyreek's going to get a high pick, but maybe a couple of the Celtics' actual own picks. That maybe one. Like, what are you going to give up for Tyreke Evans?
Well, so this is like the one that sets the market, which is kind of interesting. We're 2 weeks. This is the first major deal if it happens. So what does it mean? It seems like every year there's the question, what is a valuable role player, worth? These expiring contracts, is it worth a first rounder? Is it? And it feels like every year we over anticipate, we expect, we blow out the worth of these guys. And every year it seems like it gets less and less and less. Now maybe that's not the case because what we've seen with the cap, that expiring contracts will have value. But for these types of players, it seems that hasn't changed. I think it's not going to be a first rounder. If it is anything, probably a late first rounder, maybe the Celtics' own first rounder this year. That could be a possibility. But I'm thinking second rounder, late first rounder. I think that's all they're going to give up. And that's crazy to say for a guy who's averaging almost 20 points a game right now. He's playing great ball, probably the best ball of his career. And he's added the 3-point shot. He's right now, let's see, where is he? He's 38.8% from 3-point line.
And I think his contract's only like
baby.
I think his contract's only like $3.3 million, right? I mean, I think it's like a 1-year deal, I think, right?
No, it's not 3.3. I'm pretty sure he's around 6. Let me just bring it up.
Yeah, go ahead and look it up.
No, I'm sorry. You're right. 3.3. You got it.
He's 3.3. Smart's 4.5. You're going to have to do the math for me. Is that within 120%? I mean, that's a bargain deal. They don't add any salary. If they do it soon enough, they still get some bird rights out of that action, right?
I don't think if they sign him for a 1-year, if you sign him for a 1-year deal, they don't have bird rights. So
that's right. There's no bird rights because he has that 1-year deal, right? If he had been on a longer contract, they would have acquired him soon enough for that. But because of the 1 year, he'll be gone after the end of the season. So this is a curious kind of rumor. And again, there's not a lot of teeth to it, but if there is any meat going with those potatoes, all I'm going to say is that it's pretty curious timing. The Celtics may have just made their decision on Marcus Smart, and they'd be willing to move him for somebody like Tyreke Evans. I still think a late first rounder may have to be included, though.
Yeah, maybe. I don't think, not if it's for Smart. I mean, I think Smart's worth well more than that. I mean, he's got another year contract. There's no way. I can't imagine they get Smart and a first rounder for him. That would be.
You're saying he has another year just because they'll have the right to match, not because he's actually signed.
I mean, look. Here's
they might not want to pay that though. That's the other thing. Like that's just
right.
saying.
I mean, that's no. I think we should kind of go down that road because what is Smart's value worth, right? Like I look at him and say, okay, he's $5 million worth next year. The issue with Smart next year is he's gonna have that no trade clause if he doesn't sign with someone else. So his value is compromised basically. After the deadline, his value goes way, way, way down unless he allows for a trade, which there's no real reason to do so. So it really makes sense to move him now if you're ever going to move him. If you're going to move him this summer, it's too late. After he signs, unless it's a sign and trade type deal, and then that's a whole nother thing. If you're going to try to move him and have freedom of movement with him, this is the time you do it. But his value is difficult to assess because of that pending restricted free agency. I just don't think that I don't think the Celtics want to sign him for big money. I don't think they feel like they can get him for the right amount of money. It's kind of an Isaiah situation in part. And I think also, thirdly is his restricted free agent is so complicated because of the type of player he is. I think that they're going to probably, whoever's going to get him is just going to get him for a low price next year and maybe hope to, use that year as a trial year to see if they could re-sign him. And Memphis might be the perfect place for him because they're not going to have their pick in 2019. And they're sure as heck not going to get that 2019 first rounder the Celtics got in the Jeff Green deal. That's not happening for sure.
No, but I think the Celtics would be willing to give up a first round pick as long as it's one of their later projected ones, like the ones that they owned, and mostly because Tyreke Evans really does solve that scoring off the bench issue, right? That immediately plugs that in. If you get into the postseason and you get Hayward healthy, look at all the offensive options you have at that point. I guess the only concern is that defensive drop in the postseason. If they did move Marcus Smart for a scorer like Evans, how much does that hurt him? And what do you think of Tyreke Evans' defense? It's not Marcus Smart like, but
yeah. Well, let me understand what you're saying. You say it's Smart and the number one for Evans?
I don't think Smart has any value, and Evans is going to help a playoff contender. So if listen, the reason the Celtics haven't made a lot of deals at the trade deadline is because you're buying high and you're selling low. That's always what happens at the trade deadline. Everything else gets worked out in the off season, and they're going to be bidding against other playoff contenders. If they're in on this because they've decided that they're out on Smart in the offseason, why not throw a pick? They've got a ton of them. They've got a ton of young kids. A late first rounder for the Celtics is just as good as a Celtics second rounder anyway. And to be able to be in that game, and like you just said, Memphis needs a pick back somewhere, then with all of those factors concerned, I just think, why not? You're talking about bringing a player in who can provide that bench some stability when it comes to scoring. It can provide rest. And that's not even just in the postseason. Although it's very important, I'm just thinking, look at the potential for injuries pile up as this season goes on. Despite the fact that the schedule has relaxed, it really isn't going to work to be relying on Kyrie Irving the way the Celtics relied on Isaiah Thomas last year. And haven't we learned enough on that lesson?
Yeah. Well, I think so. I think there's a lot of things to unpack. I think that what we've seen in the past history is the value of these guys coming over on these trades that join a team for 3-4 months is not as great as we build it up to be. So I want to kind of knock down the opportunity of what we think we're going to get out of anybody we acquire here at the deadline. It just seems like everybody who's acquired at the deadline never shows up the way you expect them to, and we overhype it a bit. So that's why I want to tamper down the value of it. If you say, well, Smart has no value, I don't know. I think he's got more value than that. I think he's got certainly more value than an expiring contract. And yes, Evans would have more value here, but he's a high usage guy. He's almost 30% usage for the Grizzlies. So he's not going to have the ball in his hands a lot. Maybe in the second unit, maybe that's where he kind of fills that need, and then he's primary ball handler, and it keeps Rozier.
He'll get a ton of usage with that second unit.
Yeah, but
it's a usage rate.
In that closing unit, he's not going to have the ball in his hands, so he's going to be a catch and shoot guy, and maybe a secondary drive and kick guy. I just don't think if people are looking for the same numbers that he's getting in Memphis, I think they're going to be disappointed. I think the percentages may hold, but they're certainly not going to get the numbers, the almost 20 points per game. He's not going to be that guy here in Boston, I don't believe.
Well, I don't know. No, he's not going to be 20 points per game, but you talk about usage rate and utilization, and the other thing is they need somebody to draw away from Kyrie Irving down the stretch. So if they're looking for scoring and they're looking to spread things out, he's your man in that regard. What's his 3-point shooting percentage? I don't see that, but we know that that's a big factor.
Yeah, 38.5, almost 39, 38.8.
So
he's a good catch. He's shooting the three well. So
and he fits what the Celtics are trying to do in that way. That would actually help Al Horford a lot because one of the problems with this offense since Tatum got cold is now it's getting sticky. You know, the ball is sticking and they're not moving it around and they're not really hitting those 3-point shots. I mean, Horford's, I think they said on the broadcast the other night, he's 7th in the NBA in 3-point percentage, which is great, but he doesn't take a lot and he facilitates a ton of the offense. And I just think having another 3-ball shooter out there would do wonders with Tatum's drop off the way it is. And even then, if Tatum gets it going again, then you've got Evans to just make, I mean, you just said, or you didn't just say, but you said before the year that you were worried about the bench production, and it was specifically offense. It wasn't defense.
Right.
We actually didn't think that this team would be this good defensively, but all of that length and ability to switch has served them well, and they are a good defensive team, and you can't just chalk it up to Marcus Smart because he's not in the starting lineup. And all those minutes that get played. Now, will that defense take a drop off without Marcus Smart? Of course it will. The dude is a dirt dog. He's the Kevin Millar of this team. He absolutely is contributing to those defensive ratings, but is he expendable? Yeah, he probably is expendable, and I love him, but they need scoring and they need to take that offensive load off of Kyrie every which way that they can. He'd be kind of like a little bit of an Iggy here, don't you think?
No, I think he's much more of a scorer than Iggy is. I mean, certainly, but in terms of his role, I mean, he's versatile. He can play 1, 2, 3. I think less one, but certainly in a pinch he can do that. I think that, I mean, he's someone that can plug and play into it. I don't have any issues with his fit here. I think he'd fit well. I think it's a question of how much do you spend on somebody who's going to be here for 4 months, you know, and how much, you know, do you think you have a chance to win a championship? And perhaps
if you
the answer out of Saturday night is that, yes, you could win a championship. And it may be worth to use a late first rounder at most and a player you don't think is going to be here for the long haul to get that guy.
And keep in mind, you still have the exception. This doesn't even address the exception.
Right.
There's still buyout candidates. This team can get a lot stronger and a lot more veteran savvy very quickly with 2 simple moves like that, and change the complexion. So we'll talk more about it. We've got one more show. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, one point though about that. The caution I have about any of that, the reason why the Cleveland Cavaliers are in large part the position they're in is because they've been in this position where they've been in contention and they've chosen to use future assets, draft picks, young players. To go out and get a guy like this before.
But they
and so when you do that,
no, it's not the same.
Get to where the Cavs are much sooner because you don't have a bench. Yes, absolutely.
No, listen to me. They're
Are you
not
kidding?
No, listen,
exactly
it's not the same.
It's happened to every great team.
No, because they didn't. Listen, John, that's because they didn't start with a freaking glut of picks to begin with. Once they got their guy, they were already stripping it down, and there was no value. They're still
look at the
picking in the first
Celtics.
round. Listen,
but look at the 2010 Celtics, and look how quickly the cupboard went bare.
They weren't.
You can't ignore it.
I can ignore it because that team wasn't nearly this young and nearly this good. So the window closed quickly. You can afford one pick to make your run, knowing that you've got an exception to use as well. I'm not saying you do it every year, year after year after year, but I am saying they still have a bunch of extra first-round picks in the future as it is, even on top of the one that they're going to get either this year from the Lakers or next year from the Sacramento Kings. So I get what you're saying, but they haven't even come close to depleting the trough of first-round picks. You're right. Cleveland totally mortgaged their future year after year, and I'm with you. But I think this is a year to gamble. I mean, remember, they won in the first year of the big 3, right? Remember that. And I'm saying I still think it's possible here. I actually think when these guys stick around and some of them get better over time and they realize how good they are, that's when it gets messy. Right now, everybody's hungry, they're new, they have passion. You bring in another guy, you get the DPE, you get Hayward back, and all of a sudden, this team is a force to be reckoned with. It's just a straight up fact. It's worth it one time. It's worth it one time. And there's still the sign and trade opportunity with Evans. That part you do still have. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, I think that I don't like using assets that are sure to be gone. And this team has done so well in not squandering assets. I agree, after what I saw Saturday night, this is a team you probably spend and you try to do what you can with it. It just,
and it's a late first rounder.
I know, but
it's an RJ Hunter, dude.
Value.
It's an RJ Hunter.
I don't agree
this
that he
conversation's over. It's an RJ Hunter. Listen, this is where we're at. We have
what
two topics left.
About?
I'm talking about a late first round pick.
Just lit up the Celtics the other night. That was a late first rounder that had no value, and he just killed them in the fourth quarter. Not everyone's going to be Kyle Kuzma. Not everyone's going to be RJ Hunter. I agree. However, those types of decisions are ones that teams make casually and have made casually. To keep the run going, you got to keep it stocked from within. I agree.
This team is stocked already. Those other teams, they weren't stocked. This team is stocked already.
But we'll move on.
All right, we will move on because we only have 5 minutes left. I'm going to only say one other thing. Speaking of being young and stocked, Tatum hit the rookie wall. And now I'm just going to say, and I love our listeners, and I love the feedback on YouTube, but when we asked that question, we got lambasted. And then everybody else in media started saying, has he hit the rookie wall? And then in the game against the Warriors, they flat out called it. Tatum has hit the rookie wall. Now, whether it's baby mama or whether it really is fatigue or it's the broken pinky that he hasn't fully rehabbed from or whatever it is, he's hit a wall. It is the truth. And so I just want to throw that out there to everybody who kind of dismissed that on the last show because we got hammered for it, but now it's official. It's in the books, and just because we were the first, now we're not the only. Now we got to preview the week ahead. We've got 5 minutes. I went 3-0 last week. I was really hoping for the Cavs. I could say 2-1. I mean, for the win against the Warriors, I could say 2-1, and everything's happy. But this is my preview of this week. Monday we got the Nuggets. Wednesday we have the Knicks. Friday we have the Hawks. Sunday, we have the Portland Trailblazers. There's a night off between every single one of those games. I'm going to be at the Portland game on Super Bowl Sunday. First time ever taking my son to a Celtics game. Super duper pumped to go. His mom actually bought the tickets, and then I'm taking my mom and my dad and my son. So all I have to say, that's pretty sweet. We're going to go have a good time. Now, 4-0. Screw it.
Whoa.
Yep.
Really?
Yep. I called 3-0, but I think that Warriors game gets him back on track, slaps him in the face. Little controversy from Marcus Smart's a wake-up call, 4-0. That's what I'm calling. That's it.
Wow.
Swinging for the fences.
I'll tell you what,
game's going to be fun.
I don't hate it, though. I'll be honest. I don't hate it because I think this is a team right now that's going to find its mark and kind of refound its balance after a couple weeks after London. Yeah, part of me wants to hedge with that Denver game. I think that's a tough game Monday night. Going to Denver.
Already lost to him once.
Absolutely, and that's a tough team. But I'm riding with you, man. Let's go, baby. 4-0.
Dice on the table.
Roll it, baby. Yep. Roll those dice,
Every
baby.
time you lose, you got to double down. That's the way you play. If you've ever played blackjack, once you lose, you double it because eventually you're going to get your money back. When you lose big, and just keep on gambling. That's what I say. Speaking of DraftKings.com, double down. That's that. That's going to do it for this week's show. It will be on demand, available on demand on the CLNS Media mobile app. And don't forget to follow us on Twitter at CSL_Justin and at CSL_Duke. A heartfelt thank you to everybody for tuning in. And a reminder that you can help support the show by subscribing to Celtic Stuff Live on iTunes and Stitcher. We'd love it if you gave us a rating and a review because your feedback is extremely important to the show. And for staff writer Samuel Elias, executive producer Larry H. Russell, the founder of CLNS Media, Nick Gelso, and for my co-host John Duke, I'm Justin Poulin. Thank you for listening to another edition of Celtic Stuff Live.
Celtic Stuff Live.